Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to this IISS Japan Chair Program webinar. We have a global audience today, so a special thanks to you, as ever, if you're getting up early or staying up late to be with us today. I'm Robert Ward, the IISS Japan Chair and Director of Geoeconomics and Strategy, also at the Institute. I will be facilitating today's webinar. The topic of today's discussion is changes in Japan's defense industry. About a year and a half has passed since Japan's government published 3 historic documents on defense strategy at the end of 2022. An updated national security strategy and 2 related documents, the National Defense Strategy and the Defense Build-Up Program. These documents were historic in a number of ways, not least a plan for Japan to increase national security-related spending to 2% of GDP by 2027. But for the purposes of this session, we want to focus on the plans outlined in the new strategy for Japan to develop its domestic defense industry. Japan is increasing its cooperation with like-minded countries in this area. In December 2022, Japan, the UK, and Italy jointly announced the Global Combat Air Programme, or GCAP, to collaborate on developing a next-generation combat aircraft. Japan and the US will also increase co-development, co-production, and co-maintenance of defense equipment through initiatives such as the Defense Industrial Cooperation Acquisition and Sustainment Forum, or DICAS. Japan's government hopes that these and other channels of cooperation will contribute to the development of the domestic defense industry. Tokyo has also been changing its defense equipment and technology transfer policy. In December 2023, for example, Japan allowed the export of domestically produced and finished lethal weapons, albeit with some constraints. And in March 2024, Japan permitted the export of next-generation combat aircraft developed under GCAP, again, with some constraints. For this webinar, the IISS Japan Chair Program is delighted to host 3 distinguished experts from Japan to discuss recent shifts in Tokyo's defense industry policies and the implication of these shifts for the outlook of Japan's defense policies more broadly. Before I introduce them, I'd like to explain some logistics for the webinar. Our guests will each speak for about 7 to 10 minutes, offering their thoughts on the various elements of Japan's defense industry policies. We'll then begin around a 20-minute discussion, followed by a roughly 20-minute Q&A session. We'll be using Zoom's Q&A function that you can find at the bottom of your screens. And you're very welcome to type in your questions at any time, but please state your affiliation and your name when writing your question. This is not always obvious in the chat box. With that, I'd like to introduce today's guests in the order in which they will speak. First, we're delighted to welcome Sumomo Sayako. She is Director of the International Cooperation Division in the Department of Equipment Policy in Japan's Acquisition Technology and Logistics Agency, also known as ATLA. Sayako joined what was then the Japan Defense Agency in 2002 and has worked for various ministries in her career, including the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, as well as the Prime Minister's Office. From 2017 to 2018, Sayako worked for ATLA in the Department of Equipment Policy, and she moved to the Ministry of Defense from 2018 to 2020, and from 2020 to 2023, she was a councillor at the Embassy of Japan in London. A warm welcome, Sayako. Our second speaker is Ue Sadamasa, who is a retired Lieutenant General of the Japan Air Self-Defense Force, JASDF, and is currently Group Head of International Security Order at the Institute of Geoeconomics in Tokyo. Sadamasa is also a special advisor to Japan's Minister of Defense. During his military career, he was involved in policy development and program promotion, as well as in budget matters. He retired in 2017 as a commander of Air Materiel Command. And between July 2019 and June 2021, Sadamasa was also at the Harvard Asia Center as a senior fellow. Welcome, Sadamasa. And our third speaker is Michishita Narushige. Michi is Executive Vice President and Professor at the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies, also known as GRIPS, in Tokyo. Michi has served as a member of Japan's National Security Secretariat Advisory Board, as a Global Fellow at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars in Washington, D.C., as the Senior Research Fellow at Japan's National Institute for Defense Studies, or NIDS, as well as has a number of positions with the Japanese government. Michi is a specialist in Japanese security and foreign policy, as well as security issues on the Korean Peninsula. He's also the author of several books. Welcome, Michi. And without more ado, I would like to open the floor to the speakers. So, Sayako, over to you, if I may.
Okay, thank you very much for your quite warm introduction of myself. You memorize my careers better than me, obviously. So my name is Sayako Sumamo from ATLA, and I'm delighted to be here today. And I'm very happy to speak about Japanese government's equipment policy changes in recent years, and what causes these changes, as well as the implications to the equipment policies in the way forward. As the title of today's webinar clarifies, these changes have developed from 2022 National Security Strategy and also other two documents. I have to mention that there is strong sense of urgency and crisis regarding security environment surrounding Japan behind it. Of course, 2022 Russia's invasion to Ukraine was a huge wake-up call. The strategy document clarified that Ukraine did not have sufficient capability to deter the invasion. So we have realized that the country with strong military capability has one day come to possess the intention to launch an aggression. However, it's sometimes difficult to predict the intention. Thus, we need to pay more attention to the capability. So when we look at this region, in the Pacific region, we always have to recall Japan's security environment is as severe and complex as it has ever been since the end of World War II. That's why we cannot preclude that a similar serious situation as Ukraine may arise in the future in this region. To respond to this situation, back to the previous notice of paying more attention to the capability, it means that Japan has to strengthen its own capability. This is obviously including strengthening the capability of our defense industrial base, DIB. The reform of DIB is urgent, as our DIB have faced also serious challenges. After World War II, our DIB has produced the equipment entirely to Japan's self-defense forces. Japan MOD has purchased the products based on the cost accounting methods, which is lowering the business risks. And also there is the 3P, the three principles on equipment transfer, the Japan's strict export policy. So due to the policy, the Japan DIB has not been expected to do the exports for a long time. So after more than 5 decades with these policies, we have found our DIB less price competitive and cost effective, and less having technological transformation. They are suffering from low profitability and reputation risks. Because of this severe situation, some of the key suppliers, such as Komatsu, has withdrawn from defense industries. Therefore, it's worth coming back to the strategy again and recalling that the strategy first articulated that our DIB is our defense itself, and we need to strengthen our DIB dramatically. So a defense industrial base is our defense itself. This may sound quite common sense to many participants, especially from not Japan. However, in Japan, this is a strong and refreshing message to the industry. as this is substantially endorsed by following policy updates. So I will touch upon two major changes. The first is the bill to strengthen the defense industrial and technological base, which came into effect in October 2023, last year. So this bill includes a wide range of measures, such as introducing financial support when industries try to improve manufacturing process efficiency, or ensuring succession of the defense business, or enhancing cybersecurity, raising resilience of supply chains, as well as challenging the equipment transfer to overseas. It's fair to say this is the first time for Japan MOD to have a substantial and direct financial supporting scheme on our DIB. And the second one is a 3 Ps. So, as I said, this is a strict export policy in Japan. But the strategy in 2022 clarified that the government intention to consider the revision of 3 Ps to realize more smooth equipment transfer or joint development in a wide range of areas. That's why political leaders in Japan have discussed dramatically how to revise it throughout the year. So in the end of last year and also this March, they finalized their revision, and now it enables that the license back not only the parts but also the full system, and not only to the United States but also to other nations, and also the parts transfer. And most recently, we enabled the export of completed item after joint development. We essentially discussed on GCAP, and now we set the format to enable the export of the platform of future fighter to the third nations from Japan with some conditions. And after having these rules and tools changed, now it's a time of implementation. But when implementing, it's quite critical for Japan to work with allies and partner nations. So with these policy changes and strategies, we have decided to become from regional partner to the global partner. So the partnership with allies and the partner nations is critical. And GCAP is a front-running symbol of this partnership. And also we are welcoming of the constellation of AUKUS Pillar 2. So I'm looking forward to having further conversation throughout this webinar. I think that it concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sayako. A couple of things that stood out from what you said. One is the strong sense of crisis that you opened your talk with. That you stressed that the defense industrial base is defense itself, and how that was quite a departure from traditional norms or recent norms in Japan. And you're talking about this is the first time that the Ministry of Defense is directly supporting financially the defense industrial base, and at the end, how Japan is moving from being a regional partner to a global partner in this area. So lots of food for thought, for discussion after your talk, Sayako. Sadamasa, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I would like to echo Sayako's point from a military perspective on 3 points. As introduced by Robert, I retired in 2017 as a commander of the Air Material Command, who is responsible for all just logistics. At that time, defense industry in Japan was critical conditions due to the decades-long budget shortage and lack of attentions. Many good companies went out from defense business. Fighter squadrons were suffered from too low operational rate to conduct daily training and peacetime missions such as intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance. Maintenance hangars were full of aircraft and engines waiting for maintenance and supply. Self-defense force cannot conduct any missions, both in peacetime and in contingency, without defense industry. Self-defense force have no manufacturing capacity, very limited research and development capability, and partial maintenance and sustainment functions. Most of them are carried out by the domestic defense industry. A National Defense Strategy in 2022 finally recognized defense industry as essential part of defense force, as Sayako mentioned. Therefore, reinvigorating domestic defense industry must be the first priority to strengthen Japan's defense force. Kishida administration has made bold decision to substantially increase defense budget for the last 2 years in accordance with the 2022 strategies and plan. Although there remain several issues such as resources, exchange rates, and inflation, the defense build-up plan to 2027 should be achieved, maintaining this favorable momentum toward the next 5 years plan from 2028. My second point is the gap between Japan's shifting defense industrial policy and the operational reality of the Japanese defense industry. While all defense companies welcome the increase of budget and diverse support from government and ministry, it will take time to turn this money and helps into companies' production line, infrastructure, and engineers and workers. Companies' management level needs to make bold decisions for investment and employment, while staff levels adapt to new requirements to reflect this newly available assistance and change prior business customs and procedures. I believe ATLA and each staff office also needs to review existing regulations, contract documents, and acquisition process to promote and expedite defense companies' transformation. In short, both needs to change together to adapt to the future. Finally, Japan should become more competitive in defense technology and products in order to strengthen domestic defense industry. Self-defense force has never engaged in combat operations in its history. This is very fortunate, of course, but this lack of combat experience makes it difficult to self-defense force operators and industry research and development staff to learn lessons from coming up innovative technology and modifying current equipment for combat reality. To overcome this fortunate disadvantage, Japanese defense industry should export indigenous defense products to global market and compete against foreign equivalents. Don't be afraid of failure or lose in sales competition. Learning through trial and errors will be necessary cost. At the same time, defense companies should explore collaboration with new partners, including as well as foreign defense industries, making most use of their unique or advanced technologies. GCAP, as Sayako mentioned, Global Combat Air Program is a first breakthrough for Japanese defense industry in this sense. I wholeheartedly wish the success of this biggest project in Japan's defense initiative. On the screen, you can see the report from Geoeconomic Institute. We have conducted comparative study of defense industries for UK, US, Australia, Korea, and Israel, and Australia. So we carefully study each policy and strategy of to learn the lessons of their industrial policy and strategy, which can be adapted to the Japanese defense industry. You can download the full text in Japanese from IOG homepage. And also you can download the English version summary as well. So report, and maybe I can further explore, elaborate these findings in later Q&A sessions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sadamasa, for that. You started with the description of the sort of the depleted state of sort of Japanese military kit, which I thought was quite striking. But you were optimistic about the achievement of the defense build-up plan by 2027, which is obviously encouraging. But you drew attention to the gap between the sort of the policy aspirations in the defense area and operational reality, and called for bold decisions from companies on investment and employment. And then you referred to Japanese competitiveness improvement in defense industry, and also the importance of GCAP. So thank you very much, and thank you for drawing attention to your report, your excellent report as well there, Sadamasa. And our third speaker, please, Michi, over to you.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Sumomo and General Owe talked about defense industrial issues, so I will talk about operational issues. I will talk about what Japan is doing and what kind of challenges it faces today. And I will ask two questions and answer them. The first question is, what is Japan doing today? What Japan is doing today is to get committed to the defense of Taiwan and acquire the necessary capabilities to fight for Taiwan if a war breaks out across the Taiwan Strait. There is one thing that we have to understand here, that is the role of the US-Japan alliance. Many people think that the US-Japan alliance is there to defend Japan, but that's not really true. The most important military objectives of the US-Japan alliance are the defense of South Korea and the defense of Taiwan. So if war breaks out on the Korean Peninsula or across the Taiwan Strait, Japan would do two things. One is to provide bases to the US forces fighting for South Korea or for Taiwan, and commit its armed forces called self-defense force to defend Taiwan or South Korea or Taiwan. During the Cold War, the US-Japan alliance was there to play a role in a possible global war between the US and the Soviet Union. After the Cold War ended, the alliance became more focused on Korea, and the Japanese parliament, which we call it Diet, enacted laws which were designed to make it possible for the Japanese armed forces to start assisting South Korea's defense in the 1990s. Then more recently, the US and Japan decided to add one more mission to their alliance portfolio, which was the defense of Taiwan. As a result, the US-Japan alliance is now committed to the defense of South Korea and Taiwan simultaneously. So Japan's decision to almost double its defense budget makes sense because it now takes care of two theaters of operations, the Korean Peninsula and the Taiwan Strait, instead of just one Korean Peninsula. Let's turn to the second question. What are the challenges that Japan faces today? Let me just point out one. The most important challenge is China's attempt to neutralize Japan. the question is, well, I said Japan is committed to the defense of Taiwan now, but the question is whether Japan will be able to remain committed to the defense of Taiwan in wartime in the face of China's military coercion. What would happen if there is a war on the across the Taiwan Strait? China would try its best to neutralize Japan. In other words, China will take necessary actions in order to prevent Japan from assisting the defense of Taiwan. How would China do so? China has already deployed about 1,000 medium-range ballistic missiles capable of reaching Japan, and additional 1,000 short-range ballistic missiles, and the part of that 1,000 short-range ballistic missiles could reach Okinawa. So in wartime, China would, say to the Japanese leaders and people, China would say, well, Japan is our friend and we do not want to attack you. But if Japan dares to intervene in Chinese internal affairs, we would be forced to attack you. Would you be willing to sacrifice Tokyo for Taipei? That would be the question. Actually, in March this year, Chinese ambassador to Japan, Wu Jianhao, said to some Japanese politicians, I quote, if Japan is tied to a tank, which is like a main battle tank, that is plotting to split China, the Japanese people will be brought into the fire. That's what, unquote, that's what he said. And what he meant was that China would attack Japan if Japan intervened in the war across the Taiwan Strait. To this, the Japanese Foreign Minister Kamikawa said that those remarks were, I quote, extremely inappropriate, unquote. In any case, what we can say is that China's psychological war to coerce Japan into neutrality has already begun. And quite apart from these issues, let me say a word on defense or arms export. When we talk about arms export, we, oftentimes we talk about South Korea. Why? Because South Korea is doing a great job of exporting arms to different countries. South Korea is selling arms to Indonesia. It is selling arms to Australia. And recently it came up with a big arms sales agreement with Poland. So the Japanese specialists are basically saying, oh, we have to learn lessons from Korea, and we have to do a good job as, do as well as South Koreans are doing. And I strongly agree that Japan should learn from South Korea and do a better job in selling its arms overseas. That said, there is one thing that we have to be careful about, which is the fact that the value of South Korea's arms export is often exaggerated. For example, some people say that South Korea's arms sales amounted to $17.3 billion in 2023, including $13 billion sales to Poland, and that South Korea exported $14 billion worth of arms in 2023. However, those figures are actually seems to be based on total long-term contract value or total business value and not actual sales values. So actual sales values are not disclosed, but it seems to have been somewhere like about $200 million in 2022 and $600 million in 2023. So we should not be misled by some exaggerated figures, but we think that South Korea is definitely a good model for us, and we have to learn from South Korean friends and do a better job in exporting in arms overseas. Thank you.
Thank you, Michi, for that. Sort of zooming out into the region, you talked about what Japan is doing. I was struck by the sort of the scale of the task for the Japan-US security alliance within the region, and then you talked about the challenges, focusing on China's attempts to neutralize Japan in the event of any conflict over Taiwan, and talk about the psychological element of this already having started. And then you had a nice compare and contrast of Japan's defense industry with that of South Korea. So thank you for that. Thank you, Saiko and Sadamasa as well. And we've already got some questions coming in. So it's obviously your comments have excited interest already. I've got a couple of prepared questions that I want to just ask our guests before we go to Q&A, but do keep your questions coming. That's good to see them coming. And if Sayoko, if we can start with you, thinking about ATLA, which you know obviously very well, which is a core organization in the Japanese government when it comes to defense industry policy. It was established, just for those of our viewers that don't know, in 2015 as an external organization to Japan's Ministry of Defense. And the organization brings together various functions within the Ministry of Defense. And do correct me if I'm wrong here, Saiko, please, including defense research and development, procurement, and exports. So my question, given that the Kishida administration has been promoting Japan's defense reform so heavily, could you describe how ATLA's role has developed since its founding, and perhaps how you think its role will evolve, given what we've heard from our two other speakers, from what you've said today?
Okay, thank you for the question. Yes, you are quite precise. The history of ATLA, it's about 10 years, like 9th years, but next year it's 10 years. So I think the development of ATLA, the history is really aligned how the equipment policy has developed in Japan so far. So the equipment policy before ATLA is really about how to deal with Japan Self-Defense Forces equipment acquisition and or procurement, or like manage of self-defense forces. However, after ATLA, and especially quite in recent years developments, I think the Japanese government has decided to set the especially equipment cooperation and also the equipment transfer is one of the tools to realize Japan's national security, to realize the desirable security environment in this region. So I think now the ATLA is more responsible for running that kind of policies, how to utilize the equipment policy to realize our security environment by doing more equipment cooperation with allies and partner nations, and also the promoting equipment transfer. I think that is the brief the developments so far.
Could you, just as a coda to that, could you say a few words about DICAS and how, because that's a sort of interesting development in the given what we're talking about.
Thank you for touching upon DICAS. It's a quite recent developments, and I'm aware that DICAS is catching more and more attention internally and from overseas. That when Prime Minister Kishida visited Washington, D.C., and and had a summit meeting. There was a press release announced after the meeting, and in the joint press release, there was the announcement of DIISS. So DIISS is an equipment policy dialogue at the vice minister level. And it's discussing about not only science and technology, but also defense industrial cooperation. So we used to have the same level of the discussion between Japan and the United States on the defense technology and development field, but now it expands more to cover defense industrial cooperation. I think that is a new point of DIISS, and this DIISS, after launched in April, we had the first DIISS in June in Japan, having Dr. Laplante his visit to Japan. And with Commissioner Fukasawa, we had the first DIISS meeting. And I don't go into details, although it's quite interesting to discuss. However, the essence of DIISS is we are pursuing the mutual beneficial cooperation between Japan and the United States on industrial the policies. I think that is the keyword of this DIISS.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Sadamasa, you talked about the competitiveness of Japanese defense firms and needing to improve that. How do you see? Well, a couple of questions. What would you like to see to help Japanese defense firms improve their competitiveness? And do you think that there is Japan has competitive advantages in its defense industry in comparison to, for example, other exporters?
Okay, thank you very much for that very important yet difficult to answer questions. As I introduced our report, we studied a lot about the defense policy and strategies in each countries. And of course, Japan's defense market is very small. Defense industry's customer so far is only self-defense force. So now defense industry needs to become more competitive in the global market if they would like to export their products in the global market. Each country has its own unique environment and requirement to be competitive. As Michista-san mentioned about the South Korea, according to our study, South Korea has achieved remarkable success in their defense equipment export. However, they try to find niche market because it is futile to compete against the American, the most advanced, high-priced platform if they want to export in the similar equipment. Success of the chances are very small. So they try to lower the price as well as the functions to meet each country's demand. Example, T-50 trainer versions, light jet fighters. Those are really competitive products. And also they try to meet the purchaser's request immediately. Right after the contract concluded, they export tanks and then armored vehicles to Poland instead of the releasing those products to their own army. So this policy and responsiveness of the customers' demand makes them competitive. Again, this is unique to the South Korea. And also Israel has its own strategy rather than competing in big platform like jet fighters and tanks, but they are competitive in components such as EW systems and also munitions and intelligence capability. So they tries to put these Israeli products into big platforms like American fighters and then ships. So each country has its own unique environment and requirements. In our studies, we try to adapt these unique foreign policies and strategies to Japanese unique situation. So we concluded that Japan is not countries, unique countries only, but each country is unique. So we need to learn the lessons from each countries, not what they are doing, but how they have developed their own policy and strategy to reach today's defense apparatus. So far, Japanese defense industry has no opportunity to really compete against the foreign products in the global market. So as I said in my presentation, they should not afraid to compete against these foreign products in the global market. And then they need to collaborate with foreign companies to make Japanese domestic products as well as technologies more competitive. Introducing foreign companies into Japanese defense industry is a very good opportunity for the domestic industry to learn their experience and their technologies. And also, United States will be an enduring ally and partner and benevolent mentor by several years ago, allowing licensed production on the F-15s and stuff like that. But now, America becomes very restrictive in technology transfer to Japan. This is not only because of the sensitivity of advanced technology with a backdrop of the strategic competition with China, but also the one-way flow of technology and supply chain from the United States to Japan. So Japan needs to increase the flow from Japan to the United States through export or collaboration, joint development, joint initiative with United States industry. So as the Sayako-san mentioned, DICAS is a good platform for this purpose.
Wonderful, thank you.
Actually, can I say a word on defense export, which is what Japan should be doing is not try to do what it wants to do, but what it can do. Because, for example, we tried to, in the past, sell Soryu-class diesel engine submarines to Australia. We tried to sell P-1 patrol aircraft to Britain, the United Kingdom, and the US-2 amphibious aircraft to India. Those are big, huge pieces, right? And it was not easy to sell those major items to any country, but we tried and failed in all of them, right? So rather than doing so, we have to start where we can succeed. For example, I see 3 areas in which there are opportunity. One is the sales of used equipment. Japan, the self-defense force maintains equipment very well. So even if used ones are very, useful, and some American friends are always impressed by the status of U.S. Aircraft carrier Midway, which is ported in San Diego as a museum. It's in a great shape even today. It was home ported in Japan, Yokosuka, for a long time. The second area is the sales of license-produced weapons. And we can now sell those weapons, license-produced weapons. So that's a second area. And the third area is the indirect sales. So we have decided to sell Patriot missiles to the US so that the US can provide Patriot missiles to Ukraine. So that's indirect sales of arms to foreign countries. So I think those are the three areas in which there are opportunities.
Thank you for that addition, Michi. Perhaps if I could just add a question, because Sadamasa mentioned to you, Michi, Sadamasa mentioned the US, and we got a presidential election in the US in November. What sort of how are you thinking about the impact of this election on Japan's defense strategy?
Yeah, so we are hedging. Everybody is hedging. And so that's partly why we are engaged in this GCAP project. But I think there are kind of bad news and good news. Bad news, certainly the US might reduce its commitment to the defense of Taiwan or South Korea. The US might Trump might want us to do more on defense, spend more on defense, and also the level of uncertainty will definitely rise. So those are bad news. But I mean, they are kind of good news resulting from those bad news. One is because of, all of us, Korea, Australia, Japan, India, and other countries, Southeast Asian countries, all of us are concerned about possible negative consequences of Mr. Trump as a president. So that kind of encourages us to work more closely together, and that's what the UK and Japan are doing. So it's a good news, and also it is a possibility of Trump getting elected. It has encouraged us to do more on defense. So that's partly, I would say, why Japan is trying to spend so much on defense right now, so that if Trump asks us, says, "Oh, Japan is free riding," we could say, "No, we are not free riding." And finally, certainly the level of uncertainty will rise, but level of uncertainty will rise not only for us but for China. So the question is, I don't know, who would you, if you are a Chinese military planner or Mr. Xi Jinping, who would you like to have as a president in Washington if you are to attack Taiwan? Trump or Mr. Biden? I don't know. So good news and bad news. So we, work together. Countries around the world work together and hedge against the negative consequences of November election results.
Just before I move to the audience questions, we've got two hands up, which is excellent. Sayako, would you like to add briefly to that?
Okay, thank you. Just briefly to respond to Michishita Sensei's suggestions. So I take note what Michishita Sensei is saying, but just my initial thoughts is used equipment. It's a bit, I think. So I have to say, so at first the equipment has a value. The basic concept is we need to use. So the used equipment, and if it has a value, it means that we have to, use it. So it's a bit difficult how to use the concept of used and unused. And essentially, if it's used equipment, even though if it's used equipment, how to say, unless being applied under the law, I think we have to put the money had a price on that. In that sense, that we have to decide, we have to sell, but at the same time, because this is the used equipment. So when we think of how to revitalize our defense industries, it doesn't have it doesn't increase the additional the request or additional, the production in the industries. So I think we have to think in that point. And licensed weapon, licensed items, that as Michida-san said, after the revision of 3Ps in last December, it enables us to do the license back. Not only the United States, but also other nations, and also not only the parts, but also full system. So under this revision, we have had decided to do the license back of Patriot system missile to United States as a completed item in last December. So we are now negotiating with the United States about the scheme and also volume and the price. It's not the easy way, but I think this is the new thing for us. And I think the indirect sales, I think we have to be a bit careful about this this narrative, because I think I just alluded a little bit about the reputation risk. So it's a bit difficult to explain, but when it comes to the lethal weapons in Japan, we have to be really cautious that our weapon system, how it's directed to the Ukraine or Israel, that kind of like the areas which the combat is deemed to be taking place. So I think that's why when we decided to do the license back, the license back of Patriot missile to the United States, we clearly explained the background is this is based on Japan-US alliance, and to support, to supplement the stockpiles of United States, not like the support of Ukraine directly. Sorry, the few words.
Thank you, Sayako. And Sadamasa, you wanted to add something? And then we'll go to audience questions.
Yes.
Be reassured, audience, we are coming.
Yes, I agree with the Michista-san's points. To start with the easier export in 3 areas. And I also agree with Sayako-san's difficulty, even in these 3 areas, has implementing difficulty. So I think the Japan government should support willing defense companies to export their products in a foreign market. South Korea has a similar organization like ATLA, and they are fully committed to sell Korean defense products to overseas. But Japanese government still maintains the 3 principles to control the export or prohibit the export, not to expedite, promote the sales of Japanese defense product to the foreign market. So I think this is very different from the Korean approach. I think the Japanese government take advantage of newly established framework of official security assistance, as Sayako-san mentioned. So this OSA contributes to improve Japanese security environment through the export and then cooperation in the defense equipment with a foreign country. So I think through this OSA assistance, Japanese government should establish the export framework in both, procedural regulations and experience, just like a one-stop shop for the defense industry to come and help, and then they can, shorten this process, and also reducing the risk associated with the arms export, such as the reputation risks or failure of the sales. So I think this is the Japanese government approach to make Japanese product competitive, and also expediting the export of this product. Thank you.
Thank you, Sadamasa. Right, audience, we're coming to your questions now, and they're still piling up, so do keep them coming. The first one we're going to give to Yuka Koshino, our former colleague here at the IISS Japan Chair, of course, and now IISS Associate Fellow. And Yuka asks about the weak yen, and to what extent it's is posing a risk to Japan's procurement plans, as well as international joint development projects, and whether there are any mitigation measures in place. I'm not quite sure who this is appropriate for. Perhaps Sayako, is that would you like to have a go at the yen question in the first instance?
So I'm not quite too much. I don't know quite details about the measure, but we are very much conscious of weak yen and suffering from this situation, because this is historical, the weakness of yen, and especially importers are really suffering from the catching up, the increasing price. So I think within our budget, we are discussing how to mitigate this situation, and I believe that it's one of the discussions my colleagues are having with the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Sayako. A question.
Yeah, just one thing. It's a great time to export.
Good point.
With the Japanese, weak Japanese yen.
Good point.
Yeah, the point is taken.
And a great time to visit Japan as well, of course. All
Exactly.
times are good to visit
Please
Japan.
let me know if you have a chance.
A question for Sadamasa from we've got two for you, Sadamasa. One from Samuel Leiter, and one from Tamura Akio from the Embassy of the Netherlands in Tokyo. And perhaps you could sort of do a brief answer to both of these. The one from Samuel Leiter is talking about METI having a large role in the defense industrial base policy, and the impact that's had on defense exports. Sadamasa, you've written about the lack of consideration of the defense industry in the economic security bill, that the recent one in Japan. So to what extent is Japan's MOD and ATLA driving DIB policy today, and to what extent is it being influenced by other ministries like METI and MOF? And the other question is about if from Tamura-san, is if Japanese defense firms are eager to invest in the military business, corresponding to in the way that government of Japan wants. And there's a coda to that for Michi. Is this enough to fulfill the expectations of the US in terms of how Japanese business is investing in defense? So a lot to pack in there. If we could do brief answers, please. Sadamasa.
Okay, thank you, Samuel Leiter. I know him very well. So let's discuss about it with next opportunity. But I think national security strategy articulates the whole of government efforts, to enhance the Japanese defense force. So I think the METI is serious about defense industrial policy today. They are studying very carefully about the new policy changes and defense industries desire and also requirements, how to expedite these defense industrial enhancement policy. So I was invited to the METI several weeks ago and discussed about our proposal to enhance Japanese defense industrial policy. So they are discussing with ATLA too. So I believe today in ministerial cooperation among the Japanese ministries are very well managed. And then MOD, ATLA are working closely together with METI. So I hope METI is going to adopt defense industrial policy as their own comprehensive industrial policy, part of their comprehensive industrial policies.
Could I have
Do
just
I
one?
answer your question? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Sadamasa. Before I go to Michi, Sayaka, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, just one word about the METI and Japan MOD collaboration. As Obe-san says, our leadership cooperation is really growing and growing. Because METI is now considering defense industries as one of their industries which they should develop. So that's why they are trying to be engaged more and more to get our industries be working with overseas industries. So they are doing many matching events when we participate in defense industrial, how to say, defense equipment, the show or exhibitions. So the METI is also joining and doing matching event together. And also I think the supply chain cooperation is really defense and also dual use, dual areas cooperation. And when we discuss about how we strengthen our supply chain with overseas partner, the METI is essential part when we promote on that area. So I think that is the current where we are now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sayako. And Michi, is enough for the US?
Yeah, well, nothing is. I mean, this is never be enough. What the US is doing is not going to be enough. What Japan is doing is not going to be enough. So the question is, we will just do our best and see what happens, because China is growing so rapidly. Nobody can match China. So that's one thing. And just let me just say a word on defense industry, how Japanese defense industry corporations are doing. This morning, I was watching a morning business news show, and it talked about defense industry, actually, talking about profit and stock prices of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Kawasaki Heavy Industries, and the IHI, and saying that the government has decided to raise the profit margin of those companies from 8 or something to 10+%. So, and stock prices of those companies are rising, fortunately. So it is already producing results, and so we'll continue to do our best and see what happens. But so far things are, kind of producing good results.
And can I just add a question? We got one for you, Michi, from Stefan Bush, who asks about public opinion in Japan, and how strongly does it support change towards a stronger defense efforts and security alliances and partnerships?
I think generally speaking, people really support the government decision to strengthen our defense capabilities, partly because of all the missiles and that North Korea is launching, all the coercive diplomacy, warrior diplomacy that China is undertaking, and also the outbreak of the war in Ukraine. So those things coming together have more or less convinced the Japanese people that the strategic environment out there is not easy, and we have to do a lot to cope with them.
Thank you. I've got a question which I think goes to you, Sayako, from Chris Haziel from Collins Aerospace, who asks, have government departments developed sufficiently to support the practical implementation of DIB policies, for example, timely processing of defense equipment export licenses?
Specific export licenses. Yeah, Chris, it's my friend, and thank you for the questions. And yeah, I think so. While how to say that discussing how to promote equipment transfer more, we really discuss how to say the what we could improve our our internal the procedures, because some not only export procedures, but also some when it comes to the governmental institutional procedures, usually it takes time, and also it gets really long way to finalize the approval process. I think that is the case in the government usually. So so we currently my division is responsible of promoting equipment transfer more. So when we think the improvement, we try to identify what are the obstacles of the process, and one of those obstacles includes the internal complicated process of the how do you say of our system. But sometimes the procedures I think needs to be understood more. So I think that's why that alongside thinking to improve the shortening the time of the procedures, but at the same time we are now trying to be doing outreaching activities to defense industries and explaining what is the scheme or systems or procedures you might need when you do the export. I think that kind of the multiple how to say the approach is essential, and that's why we are doing a one by one that how to say our steps for the improvement.
Okay, thank you, Sayako.
I just want
yes,
to add one important point. Sayako-san mentioned about the procedures and then institutionalization of this process, but Japanese government and the self-defense force has never seriously considered which technology should not be exported, which technology can be exported. With respect to the strategic competitiveness, sensitivity of these technologies. So this sometimes downgrade of the equipment or restricting some function will be considered when we export Japanese domestic product. This experience or expertise is insufficient.
Thank you, Sadamasa. Can I apologize, audience, we've gone over time, but there's so much to discuss here. So I'll do another 10 minutes or so. And I'm just very conscious that it's evening in Japan, where our three wonderful guests are. So I don't want to sort of prolong your time too much. So we'll move into the final questions now. But we got a question from Byron Callan here from Capital Alpha Partners, which I think, Sadamasa, may be one for you. And Byron writes, a common theme in the US and European defense sector is skills shortages and personnel needs for companies to scale up production. Is this a question in Japan, and is it being addressed? Or perhaps you'd all three, like you're all nodding to this question, so perhaps you'd all like to have a go at it.
Could I start?
As Sadamasa goes first, and then Sayako and Michi, if you'd like to say anything.
Please.
Sadamasa, over to you.
If if I understand the question appropriately, the theme is the shortage of the skilled labor for the defense industry.
Yeah.
Is this the
Yes.
question addressed?
Yep. You're right.
Yes?
Absolutely. You understand
Okay.
correctly. Yes.
Okay, good. In my presentation, I discussed about the time required to change financial support into ability of the defense industries, such as skilled workers and laborers, and then production lines and stuff like that. So I think Japanese defense industry is serious to enhance their own capacity, including the technological expertise as well as the skilled workers. But they must be confident about today's policy will be maintained in the next decade or another 2 decades also. Otherwise, management level will not be make bold decisions to significantly change their business portfolio. So I think many Japanese industries are willing to change, enhance their capacity, and employ so many skilled workers or reskilling existing labor force to meet the defense requirements. But still, they have some skeptical mind yet. So Japanese government should convince defense industries to confidently proceed to change their business portfolio to accommodate the defense requirement.
Thank you. Sayako, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just yes, a few words. Every time we consider the equipment transfer, we are facing two major common challenges, and one of them is the capacity or capability of domestic defense industries on physical side and also human resources side. Because Japan's defense industries are full of responding to increased requests from self-defense forces. It means like their facilities and also human resources really occupied by domestic needs. So when they think of export, obviously it needs to the increase of the physical the facilities and also human resources. So I think that's why when they develop the new type of equipments, they tend to introduce digitalization or AI or robot system to optimize the human resources, and also doing more outsourcing activities, and so that they could, accommodate the increased needs to their products. And also I think in that sense when I discuss with these human resources issues with foreign counterparts, they are facing the same issues, and some of the countries is trying to introduce like a reserved system of engineers. So the retired engineers should be reserved and try to introduce them when they need the excessive necessity for the production. I think that is the interesting idea. And also the other idea is trying to expand the nationality requirements in terms of the security clearance system. So so that they could, how to say, introduce more human resources to the production lines. I think that kind of the efforts of foreign the partner nations is really informative, and I think this is a quite serious issue, and we are now discussing intensively in the government.
Thank you. Michi, did you want to add anything to that?
No, thank you. Dave said what I wanted to say.
Okay, so I've got two more. I'm going to have two final questions now, which I'll read out together so that you can answer both or whichever one you want. The first one is from Bradley Murray from the UK Ministry of Defence. And Bradley asks, is there a risk of tension between Japan and its defence industrial partners due to differing operational requirements? For example, to what extent could GCAP face problems due to different needs between Japan and the UK and Italy, where Japan has a much tighter time frame to deliver a future fighter to counter the threat from China? Does this make cooperation with some other partners such as South Korea and Australia more attractive? And one from, in fact, let's go for three. One from Lionel Fatton, which I think is an interesting one. Is there any discussion in Japan about extending official security assistance to Taiwan? Interesting question there. And one from Simon Charlton, Associate Fellow at RUSI. Do you believe that Japanese defense companies should consider consolidation, considering that in most cases defense is such a small part of each company's business? So I've given you three final questions. Choose any of them, all of them, as you like. So Michi, shall we start with you, and then
Okay.
and then Sayaka to give you the final word.
Okay, thank you very much. Providing arms to Taiwan will be a long shot for us, so probably it's a bit difficult. But certainly we can kind of sit down with Taiwanese counterpart and discuss issues related to defense industry and also operational issues too. Because of lack of diplomatic relations, it's politically difficult for us to. Well, we always Japanese officers, planners, policymakers sit together with the U.S. Counterpart to discuss how to defend Taiwan without the presence of Taiwanese counterpart, right? So that's a strange situation. So step by step, hopefully we'll be able to engage our counterpart from Taiwan in our discussions of defense industry issues and operational issues.
Thank you, Michi. Sadamasa, any of those questions appeal to you?
Yes, regarding the consolidation of the Japanese defense industry, we have to be selective to strengthen which defense industry should be, maintained and more enhanced, because we have some obsolete industry as well. So when we think about the defense industry consolidation, these obsolete function should be, go out from the defense business. This is very cold mention, but this is a reality. And U.S. case, M&A after the significant decrease of defense budget took place. So in Japanese case, through the budget allocation, we can encourage merger and acquisition of Japanese defense industry, or more independent strengthening of the each company's defense business. So through the budget allocation and also defense industrial policy, Japanese government should encourage more collaboration among the defense industry, while make wise use of these budgets to more the most effective collaboration among the defense industry.
Thank you, Sadamasa. And Sayako, final word to you.
And final word for maybe the final question, which is left over GCAP question, probably. I think that for Japan, the GCAP is almost the first experience to pursue the joint development with non-US nations. And also this is multilateral. So we are still trying to learn how the joint development works among multiple nations. So, but we understand that when we start joint development, at least for my understanding, the three areas must be met. The first one is the policy direction, especially on the threat analysis. And also the second is technological standards, technological level. And the third is like a budget, how do you say, the confidence and budget, how do you say, the level, scale of the budget. I think from these points, from Japan's perspective, UK and Italy, it's really, really good partners. And of course, each nation has its own security environment, but the operational requirements should be different at some point. But as far as the first three, the areas are met, and also it brings the benefits for all three nations on pursuing joint development. I think that it's a process of concession and also pursuing the objective. So I think that kind of how do you say, the accumulated and back and forth negotiation is now taking place among three nations.
Thank you, Sayako. Well, this brings us to the end of our session today. And I think, audience, please give our wonderful guests a virtual round of applause. You've been, Sayako and Sadamasa and Michi, you've been absolutely fantastic sharing your insights. And there's a lot of detail in what you said that I think we will go away and think about. But I'm just always, as a long time watcher of Japan, always struck by the speed of change now in Japan. Despite all the problems, the speed of change is really quite impressive, and the ambition is impressive. And as you said, Sayako, at the beginning, you know, the strategic environment around Japan demands that this is the case. So, thank you so much for your time and your insights. So, very grateful for that. And audience, thank you for your listening to us and the discussion. And I'm so very sorry for those who were diligently wrote questions and we didn't get a time to talk to answer. So I do apologize for that. But thank you for being so involved in the session. And just to conclude by saying that a recording of this webinar will be available on the IISS website in the next 24 hours or so. And we hope that you'll be able to join us for our next IISS Japan Chair Program webinar a bit later in the year. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, our guests. Thank you, tech support, and thank you, audience. Goodbye for now.